Daniel Harper stared at his phone as if it might explode. The message he had just sent sat on the screen, simple and polite, yet heavy enough to change everything. Outside his Seattle apartment, rain slid down the glass in slow lines, turning city lights into blurred colors. He rubbed his forehead and walked across the living room, unable to sit still. For months, his life had felt stuck between past regrets and uncertain hope, and tonight he had finally done something bold. He had asked three important people in his life to meet him together. Even thinking about it made his heart race. Daniel was not reckless by nature. At 38, he lived carefully. He worked as a project manager for a tech company, paid bills on time, avoided drama, and kept conversations safe. After his divorce, safety had become his shield. His marriage to Laura had ended quietly, but painfully, leaving him with the feeling that he had failed at something permanent. Since then, he had learned to live alone. He cooked simple meals, watched late-night shows, and convinced himself he preferred peace over risk. But loneliness had a way of creeping in through silence, especially during long evenings when no one waited for him to come home. Everything began to change the day Emily Carter returned to his life. Emily had been his college girlfriend in Boston years ago. Back then, she had laughed easily and believed in his dreams before he even understood them himself. They separated kindly when career paths took them to different cities, promising to stay friends but slowly losing contact. Then one afternoon, months ago, Daniel received a message from her saying she had moved back to the United States after ending a long engagement in Toronto. They met for coffee, both nervous at first, but conversation flowed naturally. Emily still understood him in ways others didn't. She listened carefully, remembered small details, and spoke with warmth that felt familiar and comforting. Around the same time, Sophie Reynolds entered his daily routine at work. Sophie was new to the company, confident and sharp, never afraid to challenge ideas during meetings. She teased Daniel for being too serious and insisted he join coworkers for lunch instead of eating alone at his desk. Her energy pulled him out of his quiet shell. She talked about travel, ambition, and taking risks, and somehow she made ordinary office days feel exciting. Daniel admired her courage, even when it intimidated him. Then there was Rachel Bennett, the neighbor who lived downstairs. Their friendship started by accident when Daniel helped her carry groceries up the stairs one rainy evening. Rachel was raising her young son and balancing work with calm determination. She had kind eyes and a gentle way of speaking that made people feel comfortable instantly. Over time, small conversations turned into shared tea on the building steps and late-night talks about life struggles. With Rachel, Daniel felt relaxed, as if he didn't need to impress anyone. He never planned to care about all three of them at once. Feelings simply grew, quietly and naturally, until he realized he was emotionally tangled. Each woman represented something meaningful. Emily reminded him of who he used to be. Sophie showed him who he could become, and Rachel made him feel grounded in the present. Pretending those emotions didn't exist felt dishonest. Yet, choosing without understanding felt unfair. That realization led to the message he had just sent. He sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling, replaying possible reactions. Maybe they would think he was strange. Maybe they would refuse to come. Maybe he had ruined 3 friendships in one impulsive moment. His phone buzzed suddenly, making him jump. Emily replied first. She said she trusted him and would come. Daniel released a slow breath he didn't realize he had been holding. A minute later, Sophie answered with curiosity and humor, saying she couldn't miss something this mysterious. Rachel's reply came last. She simply wrote that if it mattered to him, she would be there. Daniel placed the phone down carefully. Now there was no turning back. The next day moved painfully slowly. At work, he struggled to focus on emails while Sophie acted completely normal, giving no hint she knew what the meeting was about. Emily sent a friendly message wishing him a good day, while Rachel texted later asking what kind of cafe they were meeting at. Each interaction reminded him of the responsibility he carried. He chose a small lakeside cafe known for its quiet atmosphere. It felt neutral, peaceful, and open, somewhere honesty could exist without pressure. He arrived early, adjusting chairs repeatedly and checking the time every few seconds. The evening sky reflected on the water, calm and golden, while his thoughts raced uncontrollably. Emily arrived first, smiling softly but clearly curious. They hugged awkwardly, both aware that tonight felt different. She asked if everything was okay, and Daniel assured her it would be, though he wasn't entirely sure himself. Sophie walked in next, confident as always, scanning the table before raising an eyebrow. "This already feels dramatic," she joked, pulling out a chair. Rachel arrived last, slightly out of breath, apologizing for being late after finishing work. Her warm smile eased some of Daniel's tension instantly. For a moment, none of them spoke. The situation felt strange, almost unreal. Three women who knew Daniel separately now sat together, waiting for an explanation. Daniel cleared his throat, hands clasped tightly together. He admitted the meeting was unusual, but said he wanted honesty instead of confusion. He explained how each of them had become important to him, and how he didn't want hidden feelings to damage their connections later. His voice shook at first, but gradually steadied as he spoke from the heart. Instead of anger, he saw curiosity on their faces. Emily listened thoughtfully, her expression kind. Sophie leaned back, analyzing his words with interest rather than judgment. Rachel watched him gently, encouraging him to continue. Daniel explained he wasn't asking anyone for immediate decisions or declarations. He simply wanted openness to spend time together honestly and understand what their connections truly meant without secrets or misunderstandings. A long silence followed, broken unexpectedly by Emily's soft laughter. She said Daniel had always been brave in emotional ways others avoided. Sophie admitted she respected the honesty, even if the situation sounded like something from a movie. Rachel nodded and said honesty was better than confusion. Slowly, tension melted away. They ordered coffee. Conversation shifted from seriousness to storytelling. Emily shared stories about rebuilding her life after her engagement ended. Sophie revealed her fear of slowing down long enough to let someone truly know her. Rachel spoke about learning independence after heartbreak and raising her son while rediscovering herself. Daniel listened deeply, realizing this evening wasn't about choosing it, was about understanding people as they truly were. Laughter began to replace awkward pauses. Sophie teased Daniel for rehearsing his speech. Emily recalled embarrassing college memories. Rachel shared funny moments from her apartment building. Strangers passing by would never have guessed how meaningful the gathering was. As the sun set, the lake turned dark and reflective. A calm feeling settled over the table. Instead of rivalry, a strange sense of connection formed among the three women themselves. They discovered shared experiences, similar disappointments, and mutual respect. Daniel felt something shift inside him. For the first time since his divorce, he wasn't hiding emotions or pretending certainty. He was simply present. When the evening ended, they stood outside the cafe beneath soft streetlights. Emily hugged him warmly, thanking him for trusting them enough to be honest. Sophie smiled and said life needed more bold conversations like this. Rachel lingered a moment longer, telling him courage often looked exactly like what he had done. Tonight, one by one, they left. Daniel walked home slowly, feeling lighter yet unsure of what came next. The city air felt fresh, as though something new had begun. Inside his apartment, he removed his jacket and finally allowed himself to breathe fully. He had expected disaster, but instead found understanding. Still, questions remained. What would happen now? Would emotions grow stronger or fade into friendship? His phone buzzed again. A new group chat appeared, created by Sophie. The title made him laugh instantly. Messages started appearing rapidly, jokes, comments about the evening, and plans to meet again soon. The conversation felt natural, almost effortless. Then Emily sent a message that made him pause. She wrote that maybe tonight was only the beginning of something none of them expected. Daniel stared at the screen, heart beating faster again. He realized his simple act of honesty had opened a door he couldn't close. And as rain began falling outside once more, he understood one thing clearly. Life had finally started moving again. Whatever came next would change him forever. Daniel barely slept after that night at the cafe. The group chat kept lighting up his phone with messages long after midnight. Sophie shared jokes, Emily sent thoughtful reflections about honesty, and Rachel reacted with quiet humor that made him smile in the dark. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling something unfamiliar growing inside him, not confusion anymore, but anticipation. For the first time in years, tomorrow felt exciting instead of predictable. The following weeks moved quickly. What started as one unusual meeting turned into a routine, none of them planned but all welcomed. They met for brunch on Sundays, tried new restaurants around Seattle, walked along the waterfront talking about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. Daniel noticed how naturally the four of them fit together. There was no awkward competition, no tension hiding behind smiles. Instead, there was openness. Each person brought something different to the group, and together they created a space where honesty felt safe. Emily remained calm and thoughtful, often guiding conversations toward deeper meaning. She asked questions others avoided and listened carefully to answers. Daniel admired how she carried strength quietly, never demanding attention, yet always holding emotional balance in the group. She had known him during his younger years, and sometimes her presence felt like a bridge between who he had been and who he was becoming. Sophie brought energy that kept everything alive. She planned spontaneous outings, challenged everyone to step outside routines, and teased Daniel whenever he hesitated. At work, she treated him no differently, but there was a new warmth in her tone, as if their friendship had grown stronger after the cafe meeting. She pushed him to laugh more, speak confidently, and stop apologizing for taking emotional risks. Rachel, however, affected him differently. With her moments slowed down. After group gatherings ended, she often walked back to the apartment building. With him, their conversations quieter and more personal. She spoke honestly about balancing responsibilities. As a single mother and rediscovering parts of herself she had buried during difficult years, Daniel found himself sharing things he rarely told anyone: his fears about failure, his loneliness after divorce, and his uncertainty about love. One evening after dinner, Emily suggested they play a simple question game where everyone answered honestly. The questions began lighthearted but slowly turned meaningful. When asked what scared him most, Daniel admitted he feared hurting people he cared about. The table grew quiet, and he realized how true that was. He didn't want anyone to feel like a second choice. Later that night, Emily asked him to walk her to her car. The air was cool, and city lights reflected across parked vehicles. She looked at him gently and said he had changed since college. Back then, he avoided difficult emotions, but now he faced them directly. Daniel confessed he still felt lost about what he wanted. Emily smiled kindly and told him clarity never arrived suddenly. It appeared when he stopped trying to please everyone else. Her words stayed with him long after she drove away. Days later, Sophie confronted him at work during a quiet afternoon. She leaned against his desk and asked bluntly whether he realized he was searching for peace, not excitement. Daniel laughed nervously, but her serious expression stopped him. She explained that attraction could feel thrilling, but real connection felt calm. Pay attention to who makes you breathe easier, she said before walking away. The advice echoed in his mind throughout the day. That evening, Rachel knocked on his apartment door holding 2 cups of tea. She said she didn't feel like group plans and just wanted to talk. They sat on the balcony overlooking the street. Below, watching people pass under glowing lamps. Conversation came slowly at first, then deepened naturally. Rachel admitted she had been nervous about the cafe meeting weeks ago, but ended up grateful because it allowed honesty without pressure. She said Daniel had created something rare, a space where people felt valued instead of compared. As she spoke, Daniel noticed how peaceful he felt sitting beside her. There was no need to impress or explain himself. Silence felt comfortable, not awkward. When she laughed softly at something small, he felt warmth spread through his chest. In that quiet moment, realization began, forming not dramatic or sudden, but clear and steady. Over the next few days, he paid closer attention to his feelings. With Emily, he felt nostalgia and deep respect. With Sophie, he felt excitement and motivation. But with Rachel, he felt home. The difference surprised him. He had spent weeks analyzing emotions, yet the answer appeared only when he stopped analyzing. Still, making a choice frightened him. He worried about damaging friendships they had built together. He replayed conversations repeatedly, wondering how to speak honestly without causing pain. Finally, he understood that avoiding truth would hurt more than sharing it. He decided to return to where everything began, the Lakeside Cafe. He invited all 3 women again, explaining he wanted to talk openly. They agreed without hesitation, sensing the importance of the moment. The evening arrived with soft sunlight, reflecting across the water just like the first meeting. Daniel arrived early again, nerves returning despite weeks of growth. When Emily arrived, she greeted him warmly, as if already aware of what was coming. Sophie followed with a curious smile, and Rachel arrived quietly, her eyes searching his face. They sat down, and Daniel took a deep breath. He thanked them for trusting him and for giving him friendship during a time when he felt lost. He spoke about how each of them helped him heal parts of himself he thought were permanently broken. His voice shook slightly, but he didn't stop. He explained that he finally understood his feelings. The past weeks had shown him that love wasn't about excitement alone or familiarity alone, was about peace. He turned toward Rachel, meeting her eyes, told her that when he was with her, he felt calm and certain. He didn't question who he was or what he needed to become. He simply felt accepted. He said he wanted to explore a relationship with her if she felt the same. For a moment, silence filled the table. Rachel looked stunned, emotion shining in her eyes. Emily smiled softly, pride rather than sadness in her expression. Sophie leaned back with a grin, clearly unsurprised. Rachel finally nodded, her voice gentle but steady. She admitted she had begun feeling the same, but didn't want to assume anything. Relief washed over Daniel so strongly he almost laughed. Emily reached across the table and squeezed his shoulder, telling him honesty was always worth the risk. Sophie raised her coffee cup and joked that emotional experiments sometimes had successful results. Laughter broke the tension, replacing fear with warmth. What surprised Daniel most was how natural everything felt afterward. No resentment lingered. The friendships remained intact because truth had guided every step. They stayed at the cafe, longer, talking and joking like always, but something had shifted quietly beneath the surface. Later that night, Daniel and Rachel walked home together under glowing streetlights. The city felt different, brighter somehow. He admitted he had been terrified of ruining everything. Rachel smiled and said courage often looked messy before it became meaningful. They stopped outside the apartment building, neither rushing inside. Daniel realized how far he had come from a man afraid of emotional risk to someone willing to speak honestly about love. Rachel slipped her hand into his, simple and natural, and he felt a deep sense of belonging. In the weeks that followed, their relationship grew slowly. They didn't rush into grand gestures. Instead, they shared everyday moments, cooking dinner, together helping her son with homework, walking through weekend markets. Emily remained a close friend, offering advice and encouragement, while Sophie continued teasing Daniel about finally trusting his feelings. Daniel understood something important. Asking all three of them to meet had never been about choosing between people. It had been about rediscovering himself. Through honesty, he rebuilt trust in his own heart. One evening, standing again by the lake with Rachel beside him, he remembered how terrified he had felt sending that first message. Back then, he thought thrill came from uncertainty. Now he knew real thrill came from clarity, the quiet happiness of knowing where you belonged. As the sun set over the water, Rachel rested her head lightly against his shoulder. Daniel smiled, realizing life hadn't changed because of one dramatic decision, but because of many small, honest moments that followed. He had taken a risk, faced his fears, and chosen truth over comfort. And in doing so, he found not only love, but a new beginning that felt steady, real, and finally his own.